The New Orleans slave market stank of sweat, fear, and desperation on that humid August morning in 1853. Catherine Walsh stood at the edge of the crowd, her face hidden behind a black veil, watching the parade of human beings sold like livestock. She wasn't supposed to be here. Ladies of her station didn't attend slave auctions. But Catherine had never been good at following rules, especially rules designed to keep women ignorant of the cruelties their society was built upon. She was here for a specific purpose. Her husband, Thomas Walsh, had died 3 months earlier, leaving her a cotton plantation in Mississippi that she'd never wanted and didn't know how to run. The overseer, a brutal man named Silas Blackwood, had been pressing her to buy more slaves to increase production. Catherine had refused. She hated the entire system of slavery, had argued with Thomas about it for years before his death. But now she was trapped. If she didn't run the plantation profitably, the bank would seize it, and the 70 people already enslaved there would be sold to who knows what fate. So she'd come to New Orleans with a different plan. She would buy one person, just one, but she would choose carefully. Someone intelligent, capable, someone who could help her figure out how to transition the plantation away from slavery without destroying everyone's lives in the process. She was looking for an ally, not property. The auctioneer's voice boomed across the square. "Next lot, gentlemen. This one's unusual. Came from a plantation in Georgia, owner died under mysterious circumstances. They're selling off the whole estate." A woman was led onto the platform. Catherine's breath caught. The woman was tall, perhaps 30 years old, with dark skin and features that suggested mixed heritage. She carried herself with quiet dignity despite the chains on her wrists. But what struck Catherine most was her eyes. One was brown, normal, and unremarkable. The other was bright green, startling and unnatural looking against her dark skin. The crowd murmured. A woman with 2 different colored eyes was unusual enough to be unsettling. In a slave, it was almost supernatural. "Name's Iris," the auctioneer continued. "Strong, healthy, can read and write, which some of you might consider a problem. Previous owner used her as a house servant and bookkeeper. But here's the thing, gentlemen, and I'm obliged to disclose this, every master who's owned this woman has died within a month of purchase." The crowd went silent. "Now, it's probably just coincidence," the auctioneer said quickly. "Bad luck. But in the interest of full disclosure, Iris here has had 4 previous owners in the last 6 months. All dead. Heart attacks, accidents, that sort of thing. Nothing proven against her, mind you. Just, unfortunate timing." Catherine saw fear ripple through the crowd. Men who'd been leaning forward to bid now stepped back. The superstitious ones made signs against evil. Even the hardened slave traders looked uneasy. The woman called Iris stood perfectly still on that platform, her mismatched eyes scanning the crowd. When her green eye met Catherine's, Catherine felt something pass between them. Recognition, perhaps. Or understanding. This woman was dangerous. Not because she was cursed or evil, but because she was brilliant and angry and unwilling to accept her bondage. Catherine made a decision. $500, she called out clearly. The crowd turned to stare at her. The auctioneer looked surprised. "Ma'am, did you hear what I said about?" "I heard you. $500. No one else bid. They were too afraid." "Sold to the lady in black," the auctioneer said quickly, clearly relieved to be rid of his problem. 20 minutes later, Catherine stood in the auction house office, signing papers that made her sick to her stomach. Papers that declared Iris to be her property, no different than a horse or a piece of furniture. The clerk handed over the ownership documents. "You sure about this, ma'am? That one's trouble. Mark my words." "I'm sure," Catherine said coldly. She walked outside where Iris waited, still in chains. 2 guards stood nearby, looking nervous. "Remove her chains," Catherine ordered. "Ma'am, that ain't wise." This one's dangerous. Remove them. Now. Reluctantly, they unlocked the shackles. Iris rubbed her wrists but didn't run, didn't move. She just stood there, watching Catherine with those unsettling eyes. "Can you read?" Catherine asked. "Yes, ma'am." Iris's voice was low and controlled. "Right?" "Yes, ma'am." "Do arithmetic?" "Yes, ma'am." Catherine pulled a folded paper from her bag. It was a page from her plantation's account books, covered in numbers and notes. "What's wrong with these accounts?" Iris took the paper, her eyes scanning the columns. After a moment, she pointed to several entries. "These numbers don't add up. Someone's been skimming money. About $500 a month, made to look like legitimate expenses but actually going into someone's pocket." Catherine felt cold satisfaction. She'd suspected Blackwood was stealing from her, but she hadn't been able to prove it. This woman had spotted the fraud in less than a minute. "How long have you been able to do that?" Catherine asked. "Since I was a child. Numbers make sense to me. More sense than people." "And your previous owners? Did they really all die?" Iris's expression didn't change. "Yes, ma'am. They did." "Did you kill them?" "No, ma'am. I didn't have to. They killed themselves." Catherine should have been frightened. Instead, she was intrigued. "What does that mean?" "It means that men who do evil things often meet evil ends, ma'am. Whether I'm involved or not." Iris looked directly at Catherine with that penetrating green eye. "You bought me even though you knew my history. Either you're very brave or very desperate. Which is it?" "Both," Catherine admitted. "I inherited a plantation I don't want and people I can't free without destroying their lives. I need help figuring out how to fix an unfixable situation. And you think a slave can help you do that?" "I think an intelligent woman can. Slave or not." Catherine gestured to her waiting carriage. "Come. We have a long journey to Mississippi. You can tell me about your previous owners along the way." Iris studied her for a long moment. Then she said, "You're different from them. The others. I can see it in your eyes. You're afraid, but not of me. You're afraid of what you've become." "What have I become?" "A slave owner. The thing you hate most." Catherine felt tears sting her eyes. "Yes. I have." They rode in silence out of New Orleans, two women trapped by circumstances neither wanted, both looking for a way out of the darkness. The journey to Magnolia Grove, Catherine's plantation, took 3 days. They traveled by riverboat and then carriage through the Mississippi countryside. During those 3 days, Iris told her story. "I was born on a plantation in Virginia," Iris began. "My mother was a house slave. My father was the master's son, though he never acknowledged me. When I was 5, the master noticed my eyes. Different colors. He thought it was a sign of the devil. Tried to have me killed." Catherine gasped. "Tried?" "My mother hid me. Convinced him it would bring bad luck to kill a child. So instead, he sold me. I was 5 years old, and I was sold away from my mother to a trader heading south. I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be angry. Sorry doesn't change anything." Iris continued her story with cold precision. "I was bought by a schoolteacher in Charleston. A man named Bedford. He discovered I could read, that I learned incredibly fast. At first, he was impressed. Taught me himself, gave me books. Then he started showing me off to his friends. 'Look at my intelligent negress,' he'd say. Like I was a performing dog. What happened to him? He died of a heart attack 6 months after buying me. But before he died, I overheard him planning to sell me to a brothel. He'd gotten bored with my intelligence and decided I'd be more profitable another way. Catherine felt sick. And you think that's connected to his death? I know it is. I poisoned his whiskey with foxglove. Just enough to strain his heart. He died thinking it was natural causes. Catherine should have been horrified. Instead, she felt something close to admiration. This woman had fought back against her abuser in the only way available to her. And the others? Catherine asked. The second owner was a planter in Georgia. Name was Hartwell. He bought me to keep his books because his previous bookkeeper had died. I discovered Hartwell was embezzling from his business partners. When I tried to tell him I knew, he beat me. Told me slaves didn't speak unless spoken to. So you killed him? No. I told his business partners what he'd done. They killed him. Made it look like a robbery. Iris's voice held grim satisfaction. The third owner was a judge. Bought me to work in his house. Turned out he was taking bribes, selling decisions to the highest bidder. I collected evidence and left it where his enemies would find it. He was found hanging in his study 2 weeks later. And the fourth? A slave trader named Morrison. He bought me planning to resell me for profit. But I heard him planning something worse. He was kidnapping free black people in the North, forging papers to make them slaves, and selling them south. I got word to an abolitionist network. Morrison died in a fire at his warehouse. Arson, probably. Justice, definitely. Catherine was quiet for a long time, processing all of this. So you didn't directly kill any of them, but you orchestrated their downfall. I revealed their sins. What happened after that was consequence, not murder. And you think I'm going to be different? That I won't meet the same fate? Iris looked at her with those mismatched eyes. You already know you're complicit in evil, Mrs. Walsh. The question is whether you're going to do something about it or become another name on my list of dead masters. Catherine should have been terrified. Should have sold Iris immediately, sent her far away before whatever curse followed her could strike. But Catherine had spent 3 months drowning in guilt and helplessness, watching an overseer brutalize people she legally owned but morally couldn't protect. She was tired of being powerless. Then help me fix it, Catherine said. Help me find a way to free the people on my plantation without destroying their lives or mine. Do that, and you'll have your own freedom. I give you my word. Iris studied her for a long moment. Your word isn't worth much in this world, Mrs. Walsh. But I'll help you anyway. Not because I trust you, but because I'm tired of watching evil men prosper while good people suffer. Then we're in agreement. For now, Iris said. But understand this, if you betray me, if you turn out to be just another master hiding cruelty behind kind words, I will destroy you. And unlike the others, you'll see it coming. Catherine met her gaze without flinching. If I betray you, I'll deserve destruction. They arrived at Magnolia Grove on a Wednesday afternoon. The plantation sprawled across 800 acres of rich Mississippi farmland. The big house was a grand column structure that Catherine had always found oppressive rather than impressive. But it was the slave quarters that made her stomach turn. Rows of small shacks, barely weatherproof, where 70 people lived in conditions that would shame a prison warden. Silas Blackwood was waiting on the front porch. He was a large man with a hard face and eyes that revealed nothing but calculation. Mrs. Walsh, he said with false courtesy. You're back. And you brought company. This is Iris. She'll be working in the house, keeping the books. Blackwood's eyes narrowed when he saw Iris's mismatched eyes. Ma'am, I don't think that's wise. I can handle the books just fine. I'm sure you can, Mr. Blackwood. But I prefer to have someone whose loyalty is to me alone. It was a direct challenge, and Blackwood knew it. His jaw tightened. As you wish, ma'am. But don't say I didn't warn you when trouble follows. He stalked off toward the fields, radiating hostility. Iris watched him go. He's stealing from you. And probably worse. I know. That's why you're here. Catherine showed Iris to a room in the big house, a small but comfortable chamber that had once been a sewing room. It was more space and privacy than Iris had probably ever had in her life. This is yours, Catherine said. Lock the door at night if you want. You're safe here. Iris looked around the room with something that might have been wonder. Then she turned back to Catherine. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Treating me like a person. You could work me in the fields, beat me, sell me. Instead you give me a room in your house and promise me safety. Why? Catherine thought about how to answer. Finally, she said, because I'm trying to be less of a monster than the world expects me to be. And because you're the first person I've met who might actually be able to help me become something better. I can't save your soul, Mrs. Walsh. I'm not asking you to save it. Just help me figure out how to stop destroying others while I lose it. Iris smiled slightly. It was the first genuine emotion Catherine had seen from her. All right. I can work with that. That night, Catherine couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Iris's story, about the men who died, about the cycle of cruelty and revenge that seemed to define the world of slavery. Around midnight, she heard footsteps in the hallway. She grabbed her robe and went to investigate. Iris was standing at the window of the library, looking out at the slave quarters. Moonlight illuminated her face, making her green eye glow eerily. Can't sleep either? Catherine asked. I never sleep much. Too many nightmares. Iris didn't turn from the window. I've been watching your overseer. He goes to the quarters every night around this time. Visits different cabins. The women's cabins. Catherine felt ice in her stomach. Oh God. He's raping them. Has been for months, probably. Your husband either didn't know or didn't care. Thomas was dying. He wasn't paying attention to anything the last 6 months. And Blackwood took advantage. Built his own little kingdom where he could do whatever he wanted. Iris finally turned to face Catherine. That's the first thing we have to fix. Not the accounts, not the profits. Him. I can't just fire him. He has friends, connections. If I make an enemy of him without proof. Then we get proof. And we make sure everyone knows what kind of man he is. Iris's green eye gleamed with cold determination. I told you I destroy evil men, Mrs. Walsh. Are you prepared to let me do it? Catherine thought about those women in the quarters, suffering in silence because they had no power, no voice, no protection. She thought about her own helplessness, her fear of challenging Blackwood directly. And she made her choice. Yes, she said. I am. Good. Because starting tomorrow, we're going to war. And before we're done, Silas Blackwood is going to regret ever stepping foot on this plantation. Iris smiled, and in the moonlight, with that strange green eye shining, she looked almost otherworldly. Catherine understood now why men feared her. She wasn't cursed. She wasn't evil. She was justice incarnate, dressed in the skin of a woman the world had tried to break but couldn't. And Silas Blackwood had no idea what was coming for him. Catherine woke before dawn the next morning, her mind already racing with plans and fears. She'd committed herself to taking down Blackwood, but she had no idea how to actually do it. She found Iris already awake, sitting at the desk in the library with the plantation's account book spread before her. In the gray morning light, Iris's green eye seemed almost to glow as she examined the columns of numbers. You've been up all night, Catherine observed. I told you, I don't sleep much. Iris tapped one of the ledgers. Your overseer is more creative than I expected. He's not just stealing cash. He's inflating the cost of supplies, creating fake workers on the payroll, and selling your cotton on the side for personal profit. I estimate he's taken about $15,000 from you in the last year alone. Catherine sank into a chair. 15,000. That's a fortune. It's also evidence. But we need more than financial fraud to destroy him. Men like Blackwood can talk their way out of theft, blame it on accounting errors, claim they were trying to help. Iris closed the ledger. We need to document the violence. The rape. The things he's done that can't be explained away. How do we do that? The women in the quarters are terrified. They won't testify against him. We don't need them to testify. We need witnesses who will be believed. White witnesses. Iris looked at Catherine directly. You need to see what he does with your own eyes. Then you can't be dismissed as a hysterical woman believing slave gossip. Catherine's stomach turned at the thought, but she knew Iris was right. What do I need to do? Tonight, we watch the quarters. We document who he visits and what he does. And then, when we have enough evidence, we expose him in a way he can't escape. They spent the day preparing. Iris continued examining the books, building a comprehensive record of Blackwood's theft. Catherine interviewed the house servants, gently asking about conditions on the plantation. What she learned made her sick. Blackwood ruled through terror. He whipped people for the smallest infractions. He separated families as punishment. And yes, he regularly forced himself on the women in the quarters, always choosing those who had no husband or male relatives to object. One elderly woman named Ruth finally spoke to Catherine directly. Mrs. Walsh, I don't know what you're planning, but be careful. Mr. Blackwood, he's got friends. Other overseers, traders, even some lawmen. They protect each other. And they don't take kindly to women, white or black, who cause trouble. I understand the risk, Catherine said. But I can't let this continue. Ruth looked at her with sad, knowing eyes. Your husband, God rest him, he knew what Blackwood was. He just didn't care enough to stop it. What makes you different? I have to be different, Catherine said quietly. Because if I'm not, I'm complicit in evil. And I refuse to be that person. That night, Catherine and Iris positioned themselves in the darkness near the slave quarters. They'd dressed in dark clothes and found a spot behind an old shed where they could observe without being seen. Around 11 o'clock, Blackwood emerged from his small house near the overseer's office. He carried a lantern and a bottle, walking with the confident swagger of a man who believed himself untouchable. Catherine watched as he entered one of the cabins. Through the window, she could see a woman inside, young, maybe 20. The woman's face showed fear, resignation, and despair. What followed made Catherine physically ill. She wanted to look away, but she forced herself to watch. To bear witness. Because if she couldn't even witness it, how could she claim to want to stop it? After 20 minutes, Blackwood emerged, adjusting his clothes. He went to another cabin. Catherine counted. 5 different cabins. 5 different women. When Blackwood finally returned to his own house, Catherine was shaking with rage and horror. Now you've seen it, Iris said quietly. Now you understand what kind of man he is. I'm going to destroy him, Catherine said through clenched teeth. Good. But we have to be smart about it. Emotional reactions won't work. We need a plan. They returned to the big house and spent the rest of the night strategizing. Iris had a devious mind, shaped by years of surviving in a world designed to crush her. She understood how to manipulate systems, how to turn powerful men against each other. Blackwood's theft is the key, Iris explained. The rape, as horrible as it is, won't be enough. White men don't care what happens to slave women. But money? They care about money. If we can prove Blackwood has been stealing from you, his allies will abandon him. How do we prove it in a way that can't be dismissed? We audit everything. Publicly. We bring in an independent auditor from Natchez or Vicksburg, someone with a reputation who can't be bought by Blackwood. When the auditor confirms the theft, Blackwood's credibility collapses. Then we add the other accusations. What other accusations? Iris smiled grimly. I've been talking to people. Did you know Blackwood sells information to slave catchers? He tips them off when runaways pass through the area. Gets a cut of the reward when they're captured. Some of the people he's turned in were legally free. He had them enslaved just for profit. Catherine felt cold fury building. That's kidnapping. Exactly. And that's a crime even white authorities will prosecute, because it threatens the whole system. If you can't trust who's actually a slave and who's free, the whole slave economy becomes unstable. So we expose his theft, his kidnapping connections, and his violence. All at once, from multiple directions, so he can't defend against everything. Exactly. We overwhelm him. Make him so toxic that even his friends won't protect him. Iris leaned forward. But there's one more thing we need. We need to make sure you're protected. Because when Blackwood falls, his allies will come after you. They'll claim you're unstable, that a woman can't run a plantation, that you should be placed under the legal guardianship of a male relative. Catherine hadn't thought of that. I have no male relatives. Thomas's brother died years ago. Then we need to establish your competence publicly before we move against Blackwood. Improve the plantation's profits, gain the respect of neighboring planters, make it impossible for anyone to claim you're unfit. That could take months. We have time. Blackwood doesn't know we're investigating him. We use that advantage. Catherine looked at this remarkable woman, this slave with a green eye who'd orchestrated the downfall of 4 masters and was now calmly planning the destruction of a 5th. Why are you helping me? Catherine asked. You could just kill Blackwood yourself. Make it look like an accident, like the others. Because killing him wouldn't change anything. Another overseer would take his place, probably just as bad. But if you can transform this plantation, change how it operates, maybe free some of these people legally, that's real change. That's worth fighting for. You think I can actually do that? Iris studied her with those mismatched eyes. I think you're either going to become the woman you're pretending to be, or you're going to break trying. Either way, it's more interesting than just killing Blackwood. Catherine couldn't help but laugh, slightly hysterically. You have a strange sense of what's interesting. I've had a strange life, Mrs. Walsh. Over the next 6 weeks, Catherine and Iris worked systematically to strengthen Catherine's position while building the case against Blackwood. Catherine made a show of taking personal interest in the plantation's operations. She rode through the fields, asked questions, made small improvements to working conditions that cost little but improved morale. She hosted a dinner for neighboring planters and their wives, presenting herself as a competent widow determined to honor her late husband's legacy. The response was cautiously positive. People expected her to fail, to sell the plantation or remarry quickly. Instead, she seemed capable and determined. Meanwhile, Iris worked in the shadows. She documented every penny of Blackwood's theft, created a network of informants among the enslaved workers, and carefully gathered evidence about his connections to slave catchers. She also did something else. She began quietly teaching some of the younger enslaved people to read, holding secret lessons in the woods after dark. It was incredibly dangerous. Teaching slaves to read was illegal in Mississippi, but Iris was determined that at least some people would have the tools to fight for their own freedom. Catherine discovered the lessons by accident one night when she couldn't sleep and went for a walk. She found Iris in a clearing with 5 children, teaching them letters by moonlight. Iris looked up, fear flashing across her face for the first time since Catherine had met her. Mrs. Walsh, Show me how you do it, Catherine interrupted. Show me how to teach them. Iris stared at her. You could be arrested if anyone found out. So could you. So could they. But they deserve the chance to learn, to have some power over their own lives. Catherine sat down on a log. Teach me. I'll help. From that night forward, Catherine joined the secret lessons. It was the first time in her life she'd done something genuinely illegal, genuinely dangerous. And it felt right in a way that nothing else ever had. One of the children, a bright girl named Mercy, asked Catherine a question that haunted her. "Mrs. Walsh, if you don't believe in slavery, why don't you just free us all?" Catherine struggled to answer. "Because the law won't let me. In Mississippi, you can't free slaves without posting a bond and forcing them to leave the state. If I tried to free everyone at once, you'd all be homeless, penniless, and hunted. We need to find a better way." "What better way is there than freedom?" Mercy asked. Catherine had no good answer. That question drove Catherine to push harder, to look for legal loopholes, to search for some way to dismantle the system she was trapped in. She wrote letters to lawyers in northern states, to abolitionist organizations, to anyone who might have ideas. The responses were discouraging. Mississippi's laws were designed specifically to make freeing slaves difficult and expensive. Even if she found the money, the freed people would have to leave immediately or be re-enslaved. "It's impossible," Catherine told Iris one evening in frustration. "The system is designed to perpetuate itself. There's no legal way out." "Then we work outside the law," Iris said calmly. "The Underground Railroad helps people escape to the north. We could connect with them, help people leave a few at a time. That's incredibly dangerous. If we're caught, we'd be arrested, prosecuted, probably imprisoned. I know the risks, Mrs. Walsh. But what's the alternative? Accepting that these people will live and die in bondage because changing things is too dangerous." Catherine thought about Mercy, about Ruth, about all the people who looked to her with desperate hope that she might be different from other masters. "No," she said finally. "The alternative is fighting. Even if we lose, even if it destroys us, we fight." Iris smiled. "Good. Because I've made contact with an Underground Railroad conductor. A man named William Still in Philadelphia. He's willing to help if we can get people to the Mississippi River. From there, they can travel north by boat. How many people can we move? A few at a time. Maybe 5 or 6 every few months. It'll take years to empty this plantation. Then we start," Catherine said. "And in the meantime, we take down Blackwood." The auditor arrived from Vicksburg on a Tuesday morning. His name was Henry Morrison, and he had a reputation for being absolutely incorruptible. Catherine had paid him a substantial fee to conduct a complete review of the plantation's finances. Blackwood was furious when he heard about the audit. "Mrs. Walsh, this is completely unnecessary," he said, barging into her office. "I've been managing these books for years. Your husband trusted me." "My husband is dead, Mr. Blackwood. And I prefer to verify things for myself." "You're calling me a thief?" "I'm calling you my employee. And I have every right to review my own accounts." Blackwood's face turned red with rage. "You're making a mistake. A woman can't run a plantation alone. You need me. Actually, Mr. Blackwood, I'm beginning to think I need you to leave. But we'll see what Mr. Morrison's audit reveals." Blackwood stormed out, and Catherine sat back in her chair, her heart pounding. She'd just drawn a line in the sand. There was no going back now. Morrison spent 3 days examining the books. Iris assisted him, pointing out discrepancies and helping him trace the flow of money. Morrison became increasingly grim as the audit progressed. On the 4th day, he presented his findings to Catherine in her office. "Mrs. Walsh, I've found extensive evidence of fraud and embezzlement. Your overseer has been systematically stealing from this plantation for at least 2 years, probably longer. The total amount exceeds $20,000. Catherine felt vindicated and furious. "Can you document this in a report?" "I already have. Every fraudulent entry, every stolen payment, every fake expense. It's all here." Morrison handed her a thick folder. "Mrs. Walsh, you need to dismiss this man immediately and contact the authorities. This isn't just employee theft. This is criminal fraud. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. I'll take it from here. After Morrison left, Catherine sat with the report, her hands shaking. She had the evidence. Now she needed the courage to use it. Iris entered the office. Well, we have him. Everything we need to destroy his reputation and have him arrested. Then it's time to move. Before he realizes what we found. Catherine nodded. Send for Sheriff Williams. Tell him I have evidence of a crime I need to report. And Blackwood? Tell him I want to see him in my office. It's time to end this. Iris smiled with grim satisfaction. About time. An hour later, Silas Blackwood stood in Catherine's office, his expression arrogant and contemptuous. He didn't know yet that his world was about to collapse. You wanted to see me, Mrs. Walsh? Yes, Mr. Blackwood. I wanted to inform you that you're dismissed from your position as overseer, effective immediately. I'm also filing criminal charges against you for embezzlement and fraud. Blackwood's expression went from contempt to shock to rage in seconds. You can't do that. I'll fight this. I have friends who'll back me up. I have an independent auditor's report documenting $20,000 in theft. I have my own records of your misconduct. And I have witnesses to other crimes you've committed. Catherine stood, meeting his eyes. You're finished here, Mr. Blackwood. The only question is whether you leave quietly or in chains. You stupid woman. You have no idea what you're doing. Do you think the other planters will stand for this? A woman prosecuting her own overseer? They'll destroy you. Perhaps. But you'll already be destroyed. And that's worth the risk. Blackwood's face twisted with hatred. This is because of that cursed slave, isn't it? The one with the demon eye. She's been poisoning your mind, turning you against me. Iris has been helping me see the truth. About you, about this plantation, about everything. Where is she? Blackwood looked around wildly. Where's that witch? Right here, Iris said, stepping out from behind a bookshelf where she'd been hiding. Blackwood lunged toward her, but Catherine pulled a pistol from her desk drawer and aimed it directly at him. Don't move, Mr. Blackwood. The sheriff will be here within the hour to arrest you. You can wait here quietly, or I can shoot you for threatening me and my household. Your choice. Blackwood froze, staring at the gun. Then he laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You won't shoot me. You don't have the courage. Try me, Catherine said coldly. They stood like that for a long, tense moment. Then Blackwood slowly backed away. This isn't over, he said. Even if I go down, you're going down with me. I'll make sure everyone knows you're working with slaves, that you're an abolitionist, that you're undermining the whole system. They'll destroy you worse than they'll destroy me. Then we'll burn together, Catherine said. But at least I'll burn knowing I did the right thing. Sheriff Williams arrived 20 minutes later. He listened to Catherine's accusations, reviewed Morrison's report, and reluctantly agreed to arrest Blackwood. Mrs. Walsh, this is going to cause a lot of trouble, the sheriff warned. Blackwood's got friends. They won't take this lying down. I understand. But I won't tolerate theft and violence on my property. As Blackwood was led away in chains, he turned back to look at Iris one last time. 5 masters, he said with venom. 5 dead masters. And now me. You really are cursed. Iris met his gaze calmly. Not cursed, Mr. Blackwood. Just very good at recognizing evil men and making sure they face consequences. After he was gone, Catherine collapsed into her chair, exhausted and exhilarated. We did it, she said. We started it, Iris corrected. Now comes the hard part. Surviving the backlash. The backlash came faster and harder than Catherine had anticipated. Within a week of Blackwood's arrest, 3 neighboring planters visited Magnolia Grove to express their concerns. They sat in Catherine's parlor, drinking her tea and barely concealing their hostility. "Mrs. Walsh," said Colonel Briggs, the wealthiest planter in the county, "we're troubled by this situation with your overseer. Blackwood claims you've been influenced by abolitionist sympathies. That you're planning to free your slaves." "I'm planning to run my plantation profitably and legally," Catherine replied carefully. "Mr. Blackwood was stealing from me. I prosecuted a thief. Nothing more. But you've given that peculiar slave woman, the one with the eye, unusual privileges. She works in your house, keeps your books, has access to your private affairs. That's irregular. Iris is an excellent bookkeeper. She discovered the theft that Mr. Blackwood committed. I trust her judgment." "You trust a slave's judgment over a white man's?" Another planter, James Richland, leaned forward. "Mrs. Walsh, that's dangerous thinking. It sets a bad precedent. Slaves need to know their place. Iris knows her place. She's my employee, and she does her job well." "She's not your employee," Briggs said sharply. "She's your property. There's a difference. And the fact that you don't seem to understand that difference concerns all of us." Catherine felt anger rising but forced herself to stay calm. "Gentlemen, I appreciate your concern. But how I run my household is my business. It becomes our business when it threatens the social order," Richland said. "If slaves see that a black woman can have power over a white man, can cause his arrest and imprisonment, it gives them ideas. Dangerous ideas. Mr. Blackwood was arrested because he's a thief, not because of Iris." "That's not how the slaves see it," Briggs countered. "They see a black woman with unusual eyes who's caused 5 previous masters to die, and now a 6th man has fallen. They're calling her a conjure woman. Saying she has power. You're creating a myth that could inspire rebellion." Catherine hadn't considered this angle. "What do you suggest I do?" "She's helped me run this plantation better than Blackwood ever did." "Sell her," Briggs said flatly. "Sell her far away, somewhere her reputation won't cause problems. Then hire a proper white overseer who understands how to maintain discipline." "I won't do that." "Then you're a fool," Richland said, standing up. "And you'll face the consequences of your foolishness. Don't expect help from your neighbors when your slaves rise up. Don't expect credit from local banks when word spreads that you're an abolitionist sympathizer. You're making yourself an outcast, Mrs. Walsh." After they left, Catherine found Iris in the library. "You heard all that?" Catherine asked. "Every word. They're right, you know. Keeping me here makes you a target. I don't care. You should care. They'll destroy you if you're not careful." Iris closed the book she'd been reading. "Sell me, Mrs. Walsh. To someone in the north, someone connected to the Underground Railroad. I can be more useful helping people escape than keeping your books. I'm not selling you. Then free me. Give me manumission papers and let me leave Mississippi. The law requires freed slaves to leave the state within 30 days. Where would you go? How would you survive? I've survived worse." Iris looked at Catherine with something like affection. "You're a good person, Mrs. Walsh. Better than you give yourself credit for. But you can't save everyone. Sometimes you have to let people save themselves." Before Catherine could respond, there was a commotion outside. Shouting, the sound of horses, alarm in the voices. They rushed to the window. A group of about 20 men on horseback had arrived at the plantation. They wore no uniforms, but Catherine recognized several of them. Friends of Blackwood. Slave patrollers. Men who made their living maintaining the system through violence. The leader was a man named Garrett, known for his brutality toward runaways. He sat on his horse in front of the big house, shouting. "Mrs. Walsh. We know you're in there. Send out the witch, and we'll leave peaceful." Keep her, and we'll come in and get her. Catherine felt ice in her veins. This wasn't a legal action. This was a mob. She grabbed the pistol from her desk and went to the front door. Iris tried to stop her. Don't go out there. They'll kill you. They'll kill you if I don't. Catherine opened the door and stepped onto the porch, the gun visible in her hand. Gentlemen, she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. You're trespassing on my property. I suggest you leave before I send for the sheriff. Garrett laughed. The sheriff? He's one of Blackwood's friends. He's not going to help you. We're here to collect the witch who cursed Blackwood. Hand her over, and we'll be on our way. Iris is my property. You have no right to her. We have every right when she's a danger to white men. She's cursed, everyone knows it. 5 masters dead, Blackwood in jail. She needs to be dealt with. By dealt with, you mean murdered. We mean given a fair trial for witchcraft and consorting with the devil. It would have been funny if it wasn't terrifying. A fair trial for witchcraft in Mississippi in 1853 would last about 5 minutes and end with a hanging. There's no such thing as witchcraft, Catherine said firmly. You're a group of superstitious men looking for an excuse to murder an innocent woman. I won't allow it. You don't have a choice, Mrs. Walsh. We outnumber you 20-1. Catherine raised her pistol. I have 6 shots. I guarantee I'll hit at least one of you before you reach this porch. Who wants to volunteer to be first? The men shifted uneasily. They'd expected her to surrender, not to fight. Then something unexpected happened. The enslaved workers began emerging from the fields and quarters. Slowly, silently, they gathered around the big house. Not threatening, not speaking, just standing there. 50 people, then 60, then 70. Among them was an elderly man named Isaiah who'd worked on the plantation for 40 years. He stepped forward. Mr. Garrett, Isaiah said quietly, Mrs. Walsh treats us fair. First time in my life I've had a master who doesn't beat us, who gives us enough food, who lets us rest on Sundays. You hurt her, you hurt all of us. You threatening me, boy. Garrett's hand went to his gun. No, sir. Just stating facts. You can probably kill Mrs. Walsh and Iris. But you'll have to go through all of us to do it. And some of us won't go down quiet. It was an astonishing moment. These people legally had no power, no rights, no protection. But they had numbers, and they were using them. The mob hesitated. A gunfight against one woman was one thing. A riot involving 70 enslaved people was something else entirely. That could spark a full rebellion, the nightmare every slave owner feared. Garrett glared at Catherine. This isn't over. We'll be back. And next time, your slaves won't protect you. They rode off, leaving Catherine shaking on the porch. Isaiah approached. You all right, Mrs. Walsh? Thanks to you, Catherine said. Thank you, all of you. You didn't have to do that. Yes, we did, Isaiah said simply. You're trying to be better than the others. That means something. That means we protect you when we can. After they dispersed, Catherine went back inside where Iris was waiting. You see now. Iris said. This is what happens when you challenge the system. It fights back. And it won't stop until you're destroyed or until you surrender. Then I'll have to make sure I'm not destroyed. Catherine sat down, her mind racing. We need to move faster. Get people out, free as many as we can before the backlash gets worse. That's suicide. You barely survived today. Today I had help. Those people stood with me because they believe I'm different. I have to be worthy of that belief. Catherine looked at Iris. Tell me about your Underground Railroad contact. Tell me how we can move people north. Over the next 2 months, Catherine and Iris orchestrated the escape of 12 people from Magnolia Grove. They used a network of safe houses and sympathetic riverboat captains to move people up the Mississippi River toward free states. It was terrifying work. Every person who left risked being caught, tortured, returned in chains. Catherine risked everything, her freedom, her property, her life, every time she helped someone escape. But she couldn't stop. Not after Isaiah and the others had stood with her. Not after Mercy had asked why freedom wasn't possible. The plantation's productivity actually improved during this time. Without Blackwood's brutality, people worked harder. Catherine introduced small reforms, better food, warmer clothing, Sunday rest. Nothing that would attract attention, but enough to improve lives. She also continued the secret reading lessons, now with a dozen children attending. Iris taught them not just letters, but ideas. Ideas about rights, about justice, about the fundamental equality of all people. It was seditious. It was illegal. It was necessary. But their luck couldn't hold forever. In October, one of the escapees was caught near St. Louis. Under torture, he gave up names. Catherine's name. Iris's name. The whole network. Federal marshals arrived at Magnolia Grove on a cold October morning. They had warrants for Catherine's arrest on charges of aiding fugitive slaves, a federal crime under the Fugitive Slave Act. Catherine was in the library when they came. Iris was with her. "I'm not going to let them take you," Iris said, standing between Catherine and the door. "You don't have a choice. If you resist, they'll kill you. Better dead than watching you go to prison for trying to do the right thing." Catherine felt tears on her face. "Iris, you've spent your whole life fighting. Let me fight this one. I'll go to trial. I'll tell the truth about what we were trying to do. Maybe it'll matter. It won't matter. You'll be convicted and imprisoned. Everything you've tried to build here will collapse. Then maybe someone else will build it better." Catherine took Iris's hands. "Promise me something. If I'm imprisoned, you'll continue the work. You'll help more people escape. You'll teach more children to read. You'll be the woman I tried to be. Mrs. Walsh." "Catherine. Call me Catherine. We're friends, Iris. We've been friends for months now, even if the world says that's impossible." Iris's mismatched eyes filled with tears. "All right, Catherine. I promise." The marshals burst in then, guns drawn. They arrested Catherine, reading the charges in flat, bureaucratic language that made helping human beings escape bondage sound like a crime against property. As they led her away in chains, Catherine saw the enslaved workers gathered again, their faces stricken. Isaiah stepped forward. "Mrs. Walsh, we won't forget what you tried to do. We'll tell our children. We'll remember." Catherine nodded, unable to speak. She looked back once as they loaded her into a wagon. Iris stood on the porch of the big house, that strange green eye reflecting the morning sun, her expression fierce and determined. Catherine understood in that moment what Iris's previous masters had seen. Not a curse. Not a demon. But a woman who would never stop fighting, never stop seeking justice, never surrender to a system built on cruelty. And Catherine realized that she'd become the same kind of woman. Whatever happened next, she'd never regret that transformation. Catherine Walsh's trial began in the federal courthouse in Jackson, Mississippi, on November 15, 1853. The courtroom was packed with spectators, most of them hostile. She sat at the defense table, wearing a simple black dress, her hands folded calmly despite the fear gnawing at her stomach. Her lawyer, a young man named Daniel Harris from Boston, had agreed to defend her pro bono. He believed in the abolitionist cause, but he'd warned Catherine that her conviction was almost certain. "The Fugitive Slave Act is federal law," he'd explained. "You're accused of violating it multiple times. The evidence is substantial. The best we can hope for is a lenient sentence." "How lenient?" 5 years instead of 10. Maybe. The prosecutor was a Mississippi native named Josiah Crenshaw, a fierce defender of slavery who saw Catherine's trial as an opportunity to make an example of Northern sympathizers who dared interfere with Southern institutions. Crenshaw's opening statement was brutal. Gentlemen of the jury, this case is simple. Mrs. Catherine Walsh, a woman who inherited a profitable plantation and the responsibilities that came with it, chose to betray her state, her society, and her race. She aided and abetted the escape of 12 slaves, property worth approximately $15,000. She did this not out of ignorance, but with full knowledge that she was breaking federal law. She conspired with known abolitionists to undermine the institution of slavery. She is a criminal and a traitor, and she must be punished to the fullest extent of the law. Harris's opening was quieter but no less passionate. Gentlemen, Catherine Walsh is guilty of only one thing, recognizing the humanity of the people forced to work on her plantation. She saw suffering and tried to alleviate it. She saw injustice and tried to correct it. Is that a crime worthy of imprisonment? Is compassion now illegal in America? Crenshaw spent 3 days presenting evidence. He had testimony from the captured fugitive who'd named Catherine. He had records of steamboat tickets purchased in Catherine's name. He had witnesses who'd seen unusual activity at Magnolia Grove at night. But he also had something more damaging, Silas Blackwood. The former overseer had been released from jail pending his own trial, and he'd agreed to testify against Catherine in exchange for reduced charges. Blackwood took the stand with visible satisfaction. Mr. Blackwood, Crenshaw asked, please tell the jury about conditions at Magnolia Grove under Mrs. Walsh's management. It was chaos, Blackwood said. She undermined my authority at every turn. She gave slaves privileges they hadn't earned. She allowed that witch woman, Iris, to work in the house and influence plantation business. And she was always asking questions about who was related to who had family members sold away, who might want to go north. Did she ever explicitly discuss helping slaves escape? Not to me directly. But I overheard conversations. And I saw her meeting with that Iris woman at strange hours, plotting something. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. On cross-examination, Harris tried to discredit Blackwood. Mr. Blackwood, you were arrested for embezzling $20,000 from Mrs. Walsh, weren't you? That was a misunderstanding. An accounting error. An auditor's report documented systematic theft over 2 years. That's quite an error. The auditor was biased. Influenced by Mrs. Walsh's lies. So you're testifying against Mrs. Walsh to get revenge for your arrest? I'm testifying because it's my duty to stop criminal activity. Harris couldn't shake him. Blackwood was too practiced at lying, too comfortable with his own distortions. On the 4th day, the prosecution called their most damaging witness, Iris. Catherine's heart sank when she saw Iris being brought into the courtroom in chains. Their eyes met across the room, and Catherine saw fury in Iris's mismatched gaze. Miss Iris, Crenshaw said, you are the property of Mrs. Walsh, correct? I am legally owned by her, yes. Iris's voice dripped with contempt. And you assisted her in helping slaves escape, didn't you? I refuse to answer that question. The judge, an elderly man named Whitmore who clearly sympathized with the prosecution, leaned forward. You'll answer the question or be held in contempt. Hold me in contempt then. I won't testify against Catherine Walsh. Crenshaw smiled. Your refusal to answer speaks volumes. It confirms that Mrs. Walsh was indeed running an escape operation, and you were her accomplice. It confirms nothing except that I refuse to help you railroad a good woman. You're a slave. You don't have the right to refuse anything. Then I guess I'm a criminal slave, Mr. Crenshaw. Just like you're a criminal who profits from human bondage. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel for order. Crenshaw's face turned red with rage. Remove this witness, the judge ordered. And add 30 lashes to her sentence for contempt of court. Catherine stood up. No. She was just. Sit down, Mrs. Walsh, or you'll join her in contempt. Guards dragged Iris from the courtroom. As she passed Catherine's table, she whispered, "Don't give up. Whatever happens, don't give up." Then she was gone. Harris put Catherine on the stand in her own defense. It was risky, prosecutors could be brutal with female witnesses, but they had no choice. "Mrs. Walsh," Harris asked gently, "why did you help people escape from your plantation?" Catherine took a deep breath. "Because I came to understand that slavery is morally wrong. That owning human beings is an abomination. And that I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try to do something about it." "Even though you knew it was illegal?" "Yes. Because some laws are unjust. Some laws should be broken." Gasps filled the courtroom. Harris closed his eyes briefly. She just confessed to the crime. But Catherine wasn't finished. "I inherited a plantation I never wanted, filled with people I legally owned but morally couldn't control. I tried to find a way to free them legally, but Mississippi law makes that nearly impossible. So I chose to help them escape, one by one, to give them the chance at freedom that the law denied them. Do you regret your actions?" "I regret that I couldn't do more. I regret that only 12 people escaped before I was caught. I regret that the others are still in bondage." Crenshaw's cross-examination was savage. "Mrs. Walsh, do you realize you stole $15,000 worth of property from yourself?" "I didn't steal people. I liberated them." "You broke federal law." "I broke an immoral law." "Who are you to decide which laws are moral and which aren't?" "I'm a human being with a conscience." "That's qualification enough. You're a criminal and a traitor to your state and your race." Catherine met his eyes steadily. "I'm a woman who chose to do the right thing even when the law called it wrong. I'll never apologize for that." The closing arguments were predictable. Crenshaw demanded maximum punishment. Harris pleaded for mercy and understanding. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Catherine to 10 years in federal prison. Her property would be seized to compensate for the stolen slaves. She would be stripped of all rights and imprisoned until 1863. As the sentence was read, Catherine felt strangely calm. She'd known this was coming. She'd accepted it when she'd first helped someone escape. What she hadn't expected was the reaction from the gallery. A black woman in the back of the courtroom stood up. Then another. And another. They began singing, a spiritual that Catherine recognized from the secret lessons she'd taught. "Wade in the water children, wade in the water, God's gonna trouble the water." Guards tried to silence them, but more voices joined in. Some of the enslaved people from Magnolia Grove had come to the trial, and they sang too. The judge banged his gavel frantically. "Clear the courtroom. Remove these people." As guards dragged the singers out, Catherine saw faces she recognized. Isaiah. Ruth. Mercy, the child who'd asked her about freedom. They were singing for her. Bearing witness to what she tried to do. And Catherine understood that she'd succeeded, even in failure. She'd shown those people that not all white people were monsters. That some would risk everything for justice. That had to be worth something. Catherine Walsh spent the first year of her imprisonment in a federal facility in Louisiana. The conditions were harsh, inadequate food, disease, brutal guards. But she survived. What sustained her were the letters. They came from all over. From abolitionists in the North who'd heard about her trial and considered her a hero. From freed slaves who thanked her for her courage. From women's rights advocates who saw her as an example of female moral strength. And from Iris. Iris's letters came every month, written in careful script and filled with coded messages about the Underground Railroad's continued operations. Iris had been sold to a new master after Catherine's conviction, but she'd escaped within a week and made her way north to Philadelphia. From there, she joined the abolitionist movement fully, working with William Still and Harriet Tubman to help hundreds of people escape bondage. She'd also become a speaker, telling her story in Catherine's to audiences across the North. Dear Catherine, one letter read. I've helped 37 people escape in the last 6 months. I tell each of them about you, about the white woman who risked everything to do what was right. Your sacrifice inspired a movement. The rumors about the cursed slave woman and her master who tried to free people have spread across the South. It's giving people hope. Giving them ideas, **. The work continues. And when you're free, there will be a place for you in it. We'll build the world we dreamed about together, **. Your friend, Iris. Catherine saved every letter, reading them when despair threatened to overwhelm her. The Civil War began in April 1861. Catherine watched from prison as the country tore itself apart over the issue of slavery. Part of her felt vindicated, the conflict she predicted had finally come. But mostly she just felt sad. Sad for all the death, all the destruction that could have been avoided if people had chosen justice over profit years earlier. In January 1863, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. Slaves in Confederate states were declared free. Catherine learned the news from a guard who found her weeping with joy in her cell. Ain't nothing to cry about, the guard said gruffly. War's not over yet. And even if the slaves are freed, what then? They're not prepared for freedom. They'll learn, Catherine said through her tears. Just like anyone else learns. They'll make mistakes and fall down and get up again. That's what freedom is. Catherine was released from prison in November 1863, her sentence reduced by 3 years due to wartime pardons for political prisoners. She was 42 years old, her health broken from imprisonment, her fortune gone, her reputation destroyed in the South but celebrated in the North. She had nothing except the clothes on her back and letters from a friend. Iris met her at the prison gates. Catherine almost didn't recognize her. Iris wore fine clothes now, the dress of a free woman of means. Her mismatched eyes were the same, but everything else had changed. She stood taller, spoke louder, owned herself completely. Catherine, Iris said, embracing her. Welcome back. You came yourself. I thought you'd send someone. For you. Never. You saved my life. The least I can do is welcome you to yours. Iris took Catherine to Philadelphia, where a community of abolitionists and former slaves had prepared a small house for her. It wasn't much, but it was home. What will you do now? Iris asked as they sat in Catherine's new parlor, drinking tea like civilized ladies despite everything they'd been through. I don't know. I'm not fit for much after prison. My health isn't good. Then rest and recover. And when you're ready, join us. We're organizing schools for freed slaves, teaching them to read and write and understand their rights. We need teachers. We need people who understand what we're fighting for. Catherine looked at this remarkable woman, this slave with a green eye who'd been called cursed but who'd actually been blessed with the courage to fight for justice. I'll help, Catherine said. However I can, for as long as I'm able. That's all any of us can do. Epilogue, 1875. Iris Freeman stood at the front of a crowded auditorium in Washington, D.C., addressing the National Women's Suffrage Association. She was 52 years old now, gray beginning to show in her hair, but her mismatched eyes were as sharp and fierce as ever. Sisters, she said, we gather here to demand the right to vote, the right to participate in the democracy that claims to represent us. But I want to remind you that this fight is connected to another fight. The fight to ensure that freed slaves, men and women, can actually exercise the rights they've been granted on paper. She spoke for an hour about voting rights, about the continued oppression of Black Americans in the South, about the need for women of all races to stand together for justice. When she finished, the audience gave her a standing ovation. In the front row sat Catherine Walsh, now 54 and frail from years of hard living. She'd spent the last decade teaching freed slaves to read, organizing schools, fighting for civil rights. Her health had never recovered from her imprisonment, and doctors said she had maybe a year left. But she'd lived to see slavery abolished. She'd lived to see the people she tried to help finally free. She'd lived to see her friend Iris become a national figure in the fight for justice. That was enough. After the speech, they walked together through the capital streets, two women who the world had tried to keep separate but who'd found each other anyway. "Do you ever regret it?" Iris asked. "Everything you gave up to help people escape?" "Never," Catherine said. "My only regret is that I didn't do more." "You did enough. You showed me that not all white people were monsters. That some would sacrifice everything for what's right. That kept me from becoming consumed by hate. You would never have let hate consume you. You're too smart for that." Iris smiled. "Maybe. But having you as a friend made the fight easier. Made it feel less lonely." They stopped at a small park and sat on a bench, watching children play. Some were white, some were black, all were free. "Tell me about your eyes," Catherine said. It was a question she'd never asked in all the years they'd known each other. Iris was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "My mother told me that when I was born, my eyes were both brown. But after I'd been alive for a few days, one of them changed to green. The midwife said it was a sign. My mother said it meant I could see things other people couldn't. See truth where others saw only what they wanted to believe." "And did you? See things others couldn't?" "I saw that evil men always eventually destroy themselves. That cruelty creates its own punishment. And that people who do good, even when it costs them everything, create ripples that spread farther than they'll ever know. Like the people we helped escape. Where are they now? Everywhere. Teaching in schools we built. Working in businesses they own. Raising free children. Living the lives you made possible." Iris took Catherine's hand. "You know what they call you? The children in our schools." "What?" "The Angel of Magnolia Grove. The white woman who went to prison for freedom. They tell your story to inspire themselves. To remind themselves that justice is worth fighting for." Catherine felt tears on her face. "I was no angel. I was just trying to do what was right. That's what angels are, Catherine. Ordinary people who choose to do extraordinary things because they can't live with themselves if they don't." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over Washington, two women who changed the world in small, quiet ways that had rippled out into something larger than either of them could have imagined. Catherine Walsh died 6 months later. Her funeral was attended by hundreds of freed slaves who'd heard her story, abolitionists who'd fought alongside her, and children who'd learned to read in schools she'd helped establish. Iris Freeman gave the eulogy. Catherine Walsh was called a criminal by the law, Iris said. She was called a traitor by her state. She was called foolish by people who valued property over humanity. But she was none of those things. She was a woman who saw injustice and couldn't look away. Who heard suffering and couldn't ignore it. Who understood that some laws are meant to be broken because they break the human spirit. I was a slave when I met her. A woman who'd been bought and sold, who'd learned to survive by being smarter than my masters and more patient than my enemies. But Catherine didn't see a slave. She saw a person. And that simple act of recognition changed both our lives. They called me cursed because my masters kept dying. But I wasn't cursed. I was just very good at recognizing evil and making sure it faced consequences. And when I met Catherine, I recognized something different. Goodness. Courage. The willingness to pay any price for justice. She paid that price. 10 years of her life in prison. Her health destroyed. Her fortune gone. And she never regretted it. Not for one moment. That's the legacy she leaves us. The knowledge that one person, willing to stand up and fight, can change the world. That courage isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. That justice is always worth the cost. Rest well, my friend. You earned it. In the decades that followed, the story of Catherine Walsh and Iris Freeman became legend in the African American community. It was told and retold, embellished and adapted, but the core truth remained. A white woman and a black woman had stood together against slavery when standing together was illegal and dangerous. And they'd won. Not completely. Not immediately. The fight for justice would continue for generations. But they'd proven it was possible. That the system could be challenged. That courage could overcome fear. That a single green eye, seeing truth where others saw only what they wanted to believe, could pierce through lies and illuminate the path to freedom. And that legacy lived on, inspiring new generations to fight their own battles for justice, armed with the knowledge that ordinary people, when they refuse to accept injustice, can do extraordinary things.